We're recording.
We're recording. Welcome to our very first podcast. Hi everyone, I'm Iryna Barnett.
And I'm Isabella Magidson. And we are the co-host of Moments That Define Us podcast.
Today is our very first podcast and we are so excited. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being on this journey with us. I am originally from Ukraine. And
that's Iryna, by the way. Okay.
And on today's podcast, we'll be talking about my journey and my defining moments, cultural difference between Ukraine and US, and answering some of the questions you wrote in. And before we dive in, I wanted to remind you, don't forget to follow us on social media platform at Moments That Define Us.
Awesome. Okay, so to get started, I wanted to ask Iryna, what is the most common question you get about Ukraine?
So, I remember when I just got here to where people didn't really know what Ukraine was, where it was located, a lot of people. And so people would ask me, oh, where are you from? And I say, I'm from Ukraine. And people ask, oh, is that like Russia? And I wanted to fight them physically.
Yeah, it's like comparing people that are from China to people that are from Korea. Like, it's just, they're two very different places.
Yeah, and it's also like, again, what is happening in Ukraine is unfortunate, but if you look on the other side, now everybody knows where Ukraine is, what Ukraine is about. The world knows our flag and the resilience of Ukrainian people, who our president is, where we're located, and all of that. Again, very unfortunate what's happening in Ukraine now, but it's putting Ukraine on this world map.
That's really cool. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people didn't know much about Ukraine.
True.
Before this, it's horrendous what's going on, but...
It is. And so, like I said, so that's why that question, even before the war in Ukraine, the questions were like, oh, is it like Russia? Oh, is it in Russia? It's just, I am very proud that I'm from Ukraine. I'm very proud of my heritage. I'm very proud I grew up there. So, no, it's not. And, and I would always say, no, it's not in Russia. It's a different country. And, some people like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know, some with the other, and some people would say, well, it's kind of the same, isn't it? And so at that point,
it's a battle not worth fighting.
Yeah, but no, not everyone. Ukraine is not the same as Russia. It never was, and it never will be. Ukraine is its own country.
Period, Dan. What'd you say you asked your dad this morning, how Ukraine and Russia were different?
Yeah, I said, what do you think the main, not the main, but what are the main differences between Ukraine and Russia? And my dad just looked at me and he's like, there's a big difference. There's a big difference between Ukraine and Russia. So we kind of started having conversation, but again, to Ukrainian people, and I'm not speaking for, I don't know, but I feel like to majority of Ukrainian people, we are very proud to be from Ukraine. We are very proud to be Ukrainian. And so my dad, gets very, as any Ukrainian or any human should feel about what's happening now. But he was like, there is a huge difference. We are not the same, and we never were the same, and we never will be the same.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, her parents, they were in Ukraine, but they're out here right now.
Yeah, they've been here with me. I brought them here about a year ago. It's coming up. It's coming up on a year, which I was very glad that I was able to bring them here, and they're safe. Not all of my family is here, but my parents are here now.
Yeah, and we'll dive into some questions about that a little bit further into the podcast. But we wanted to talk about, some main differences and just dive into what we're talking about a little bit before we dive into some more questions. But Ukraine is a country that wanted to be independent. People wanted to be free and live peacefully on their own land. That is why even though Ukraine is smaller in size in comparison to Russia, but the desire to be free to fight for their land is so much bigger than Russia could ever imagine.
Yeah, and I think that is why I remember when the war started in February of 24th, on February 24th, Russian president said that, oh, it's going to take us 4 days, and Ukraine will be ours. But I don't think the world knew how the spirit that Ukrainian people carry, the resilience that Ukrainian people have. We will fight. We have been fighting for our land to again, like Isabella said, we wanted to be free. We wanted to be peacefully living in our land. And so, again, nobody saw this coming, that this big, ginormous country is coming and they're going to take us. And now, Ukraine not only have been fighting for freedom for now a year and a half, but if you ask me and a lot of people, Ukraine is winning. And I believe that the victory is coming. It's again, it's unfortunate, and it's very, very sad and frustrating. And again, I'm Ukrainian, so I feel very, I'm emotional about what's happening in Ukraine, but I know the victory is coming because, again, we carry the resilience from our ancestors, and Ukrainian will fight till the last drop of blood.
It's incredible. So now we're going to dive in and ask Iryna, the co-host of this podcast, about her experiences of being in Ukraine. So I know that me and Iryna have known each other for 20 years, but she came when I was so young, so we want to dive into it a bit more so that, I can understand. I never was able to understand much of the culture being that young.
I think because I came in when you were 6, right?
Yeah.
So not that you were sitting and deeply talking about, culture and everything, right? You wanted to play and color, and that's what we were doing. But, incredible what happened in the past 20 years, right? How we, stay connected and doing this now. So now that you're older, to just talk about this, right? Understanding more some things that you didn't know, right? Yeah.
Okay, so now I have some questions that I'm going to ask her, and then we're going to switch into some questions that our followers asked. So what I've been wondering is, what are some common misconceptions or stereotypes about Ukraine that you want to address?
Well, the first one I addressed a little bit, earlier, but, people think that people used to think. And God, I hope nobody thinks that Ukraine is the same as Russia. But anyway, so people used to think that Ukraine was the same as Russia. Oh, well, you're so close to Russia. It's the same country. Not the same country, never was the same country, and never will be the same country. Let me repeat this again and again and again. Also, people think that in Ukraine we speak Russian. So I do want to say that a lot of people speak Russian. I speak Russian as well, but the main language in Ukraine is Ukrainian, which is very different, which is different from Russian.
It's
right?
like Spanish to Portuguese, like it's...
Yeah, if I compare, because I have a lot of friends who speak Spanish and I have friends who speak Portuguese, so I think in comparison I would always say that yes, it's like Spanish and Portuguese, because like, for example, when I was at school, I learned Russian, right? And the television, like the movies, a lot of things were in Russian, right? So I know how to read, write, and speak in Russian because I learned that at school. But my cousin, she is 2 years older than me, so she didn't learn Russian at school anymore, you know. So again, when you just look
Wait, she's older than you or younger?
I'm sorry, she's younger than me,
Okay.
2 years younger. I am the oldest one. So when talking about just simply 2 languages, right? Like I said, so I know I can speak Russian, I know Russian, and you know, I was able to, and I am able to use Russian when I need, but because of what's happening in Ukraine now, you know, like, I don't know, fortunately and unfortunately. So before the war, there were many more people, you know, that were speaking in Russian. But I think since the war started, a lot of people are switching to Ukrainian, because now it's not just the language, it's what the language represents, right?
Gotcha.
So that's a lot of, and I'm glad, you know, a lot of people, and especially, you know, famous people are switching to speaking in Ukrainian, which it's about time, you know. You live in Ukraine. I don't know. I feel like, you know, people can argue with me because they say, oh, you know, it's just a language. But at the end of the day, it's not just a language. It's what that language represents. So to me, I feel like that
It represents a lot more than
it represents more than just the language.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So my next question is, how does being from Ukraine shape who you are today?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I talk about at the beginning about Ukrainian people being resilient, and I know that being resilient for me comes from being from Ukraine. The way I grew up, where I grew up, like how I was raised, how my parents were.
And how were you raised? Weren't you raised on was it a farm? Or was your grandma?
You know, well, it's so funny because like my husband calls it a farm, so sure, it's a farm. I mean, yes, like we had pigs and chickens and ducks and rabbits, you know, when we grew
The whole shebang, yeah.
and we grew our food, you know what I mean? So so yes, I lived in a small village until I was in 7th grade, and then 8th and 9th grade I moved to city, Ivano-Frankivsk, and then I went there to high school, and then I went to different town to go to college. But you know sometimes when you in the moment you don't appreciate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Appreciate what you have, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm so, like, Ukraine made me who I am, right? A strong, independent, resilient, tenacious woman that I am today. And, you know, being there, you know, we had land, so I was helping my parents, you know, we grew potato, corn,
Potato, tomato,
corn,
beans, greens, tomato.
beans, yeah, that's, you know, so, and being like, I was outside from the morning to the evening, you know,
And
like
just living off the land.
just living there. All of
That's amazing.
like my good friends, you know, we kind of were living. One of my really good friend was like living next door. Another good friend was kind of living, you know, very very close. So it was just, now that I think about my childhood, not that I didn't like how I lived, but like now that I think about my childhood, like I am so appreciative and so grateful that I grew up the way I did, because it was amazing, and hopefully when the war is over, I can take my kids to my oldest one. She's been to Ukraine, but she was only 9 months old. But I want to take my kids now to to where I grew up, so they can see that and be in that environment, because it's amazing. You know, it makes you who you are. You know, you might not. I know I don't live there anymore, but it's always Ukraine is always. It's always going to be a part of me. I am always going to be a Ukrainian.
Yeah. No, I love that. So speaking about, you know, growing up in different places and then coming here, is Ukraine diverse?
Short answer is no, but let me. So when I was growing up, and again, I grew up in a small village, and then I told you that I moved to like bigger city. I never really saw anybody that looks any different than me. So just white everywhere, right?
Okay.
So Ukraine is a white country made up of white Ukrainian people. But then later, we have a lot of different university. Even in the city where I was in, there's a big medical university. Then in Kiev, which is our capital, there's a lot of universities. So we have a lot of students coming in from African continent, from India. So we have diversity as far as people coming in to study there,
But do you have a lot of people staying there and raising family?
I don't know. Obviously, I haven't been living in Ukraine for a long time. But I remember like when I went with my husband in 2015, and we were walking through my city, and I remember like there's like a part like in downtown, we have this like famous big street, and there's like a lot of bars and restaurants. So I remember seeing a lot of, which made me so happy because like, everywhere needs diversity, right? But I remember walking through that street, and I remember seeing a lot of, because there were also like a big university, so some of them I'm sure were students, but seeing a lot of different kinds of people, which like I was surprised because again, growing up, I did not see anybody that looked any different than me. So again, now maybe because people come to study, they fall in love, they marry, they stay, they have kids, but I would be curious to see, to go back and see how it is. When I was growing up, it was just like me.
Speaking of diversity, this is not in my notes, but I wanted to ask about this. A fun question. So we're in Colorado, so weed is legal, but how does Ukrainians think of, I guess, like weed and like, experimental drugs? Yeah, like, because I feel like it's very, it's kind of up and coming because they just decriminalized, psilocybin mushrooms out here. So, shrooms, I guess, is the right term. I don't know.
Yeah. Again, I don't know how it is now, but I remember growing up, it was,
Yeah, like what does your grandparents and like parents think of that stuff?
No, like...
Is it like the devil's lettuce?
Yeah, like my parents never did any drugs, no, did my grandparents. How here sometimes you talk to older people and they're like, oh, in the 70s we would go to concert, we would smoke weed, whatever.
Peace, love, and drugs, yeah.
That was nothing, like I've never had conversation like this, and again, like growing up in very small village, and I don't know, maybe somebody had it, but in my group of friends,
it wasn't encouraged.
It wasn't. We never even like talked about this because I felt like drugs were this. It was almost like, and I don't know if taboo is the right word, but and I don't know. I don't think that
it's just like so foreign, like it didn't even
exist. It didn't even.
Wow,
I remember when I went to college, like this group of friends that we had. I remember this one guy, I don't know, well, he got it somewhere, weed, right? And I used to think like, oh my gosh, he's doing drugs, right? And to me was this like such a bad thing to do, I obviously have like, nothing against marijuana. Me personally don't like it, but I have nothing against that. But I just remember that, like, I remember when I saw him, and he was so like that bad type of weed to where it stinks really bad.
Yeah, and you're just sitting there like, oh, you're gonna, go to hell.
Yeah. So I don't. It wasn't anything.
That's really fascinating. Do they do you guys have alcohol? Is that legal out there?
Yeah, that we don't live in the woods.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people drink.
Which is fine.
Some heavily, but yeah, no, alcohol is fine. But drugs, no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if things have changed.
Well, you know,
I'm sure it has, but, you know, I don't know. That's interesting. Okay. But anyways,
back to the serious questions.
back to the serious questions. Did we... Okay, so we went over all my questions. So now we're going to switch routes a little bit, and we're going to ask some questions. Well, I'm going to ask some questions that our followers wrote in. So the first one is, can you share some childhood experiences from growing up in Ukraine? Did you guys have any special games or...
Like you know, I mentioned that because I grew up for most of my childhood, I was in the country, right? And even when I moved to the city for the summer, you know, for the holidays, we would go back because both of my grandmas lived there. So we would go back, you know, to the country. And so just being, you know, being outside, like that's what, when I think about, you know, I want my kids kind of to have at least some similar experience, but just growing up.
And your kids, they speak Ukrainian too, right?
My son more than my daughter, but yeah, because my parents live with us, so they learning Ukrainian, and it's amazing. Yeah, so they learning Ukrainian, but so what my family and I did, I was a little bit later in life. We used to drive to the beach, which was it's in this city of Kherson, which if you guys have been following, like that dam that was just destroyed by the Russians. I remember having, it was not in Kherson, but it was like in this little village, and like spend like a summer vacation.
Oh, that's so fun.
And I don't know, just hold such a beautiful memory of childhood, of being in the beach, and I remember watching, you know, what's happening there. It's almost like
it's like almost, I don't know,
I'm like
real,
getting
right?
so emotional because it's almost like, and I know that the memories we have, the memories you have, nobody can take them away from you. But it's like when I was seeing that, it's like your memories are being somehow taken away from you and destroyed, because I just have such fun memories. And people on the east of Ukraine are just very, very nice, very, very like hospitable. And I remember like going back home, we would stop by because they grew up like peaches and apricots, so we would like stop by and buy like big boxes, and my mom would make like jams and all of that. So just like, those
these amazing memories at these places, and just seeing the news is just devastating.
It's just
these places that hold such a magical feeling, and just it's like, Disneyland, watching it like get destroyed is would have the same kind of concept.
Yeah, so I love growing up there. I love growing up there, and I'm glad I did, and I would never want to change it for anything.
Oh. All right. So the next person asked, are there any specific Ukrainian traditions or customs that you continue to practice today? Yes.
So there's this with my kids, because you wanted to, if you experience something good, you wanted to pass it on to your kids. So how Christmas is really big here, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like presents and everything here.
Santa Claus, yeah.
Yeah, so in Ukraine we have so again, I remember growing up, for me, Christmas was more religious holiday, right?
Okay.
Which, I mean, it still is, but like for me, like we would go, wake up like...
Is Christianity like kind of the main religion in Ukraine?
Orthodox. So I am Greek Orthodox.
Okay.
so we would like wake up. I remember, I don't know, I think it was maybe like 5 a.m. There's the big church mass, so you would go, and it's like very long, like 3 hours. There's a lot of, singing and just beautiful.
Dancing
but it was,
and colors.
No dancing. No, it's very like,
no dancing, no fun.
No, it's very serious type of church.
For Christmas?
Yeah, no, like no dancing in church at all. No, it was like singing, so like Christmas, what do you call them? Christmas carols.
Yeah.
Beautiful. We had beautiful Christmas caroling. But, so Christmas was that. It was not necessarily about present. It was also like, your family would come over. There's like a lot of food, ton of food.
Just same celebration with
family, with friends. But we didn't exchange presents on Christmas. At least in my family. Again, I'm not speaking for everybody, but with a lot of people, like in my family, my extended family, cousins, friends, like everybody were kind of the same. But so we have a holiday, so it's in December, because we celebrate, Christmas, it is, oh my gosh, January, so 6, 7, and 8. But so when the presents would happen would be, so we celebrate St. Nicholas Day, which is the night of December 18 to 19, right? That night, St. Nicholas come, and he put presents under your pillow.
Like the tooth fairy.
Like the tooth fairy, yeah. So he put presents under your pillow. And growing up, because now, for me being here, like working for different like American families, and now even doing the same with my kids, there's like just a lot of presents. But I remember growing up,
Was it just like one special?
Like you would have...
Had to be small, right, to fit under your pillow?
Well, it's not necessarily, sometimes it would be like next to the pillow,
Okay,
like
gotcha.
I would have like one toy, and then I would have like, like some chocolate, and then, what do you call those fruits? Like mandarins? Oranges, but the smaller one. Oh my gosh, what are those called?
Tangerines?
Yes. Tangerines. Like,
I love that was a treat.
Yes, tangerines. Like, St. Nicholas had tangerines, children. So like candies, tangerines, and like in one gift. And you just, again, I'm gonna, a little bit kind of going off, customs and stuff, but like thinking about, and we were so happy, like, got one gift, you would be like so special, you wake up, you eat tangerines, you get chocolate. Now, like, kids like, what's the next one? You know what I mean?
Is there a little bit more of a consumer attitude in the U.S. compared to Ukraine? Is that like something you notice?
I feel like now it's
everywhere. Okay.
Now
well, I mean, with online shopping and all that. But.
Yeah, for me growing up, yeah, it was just, but it was so nice because you would play with the toys for days and days. It was so special. So I still do that for my kids. We still celebrate that.
Do you guys celebrate Christmas as well?
We do celebrate Christmas, like Christmas,
lucky
like American
kids.
Christmas
and Ukrainian Christmas.
But when we celebrate Ukrainian Christmas, again, we don't do gifts, so we more like
Do you give them tangerines?
For St. Nicholas Day in December, yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
Tangerines and some candies, and they just get one gift.
I love that. Oh, also, when you first came here, you were surprised about Easter.
Oh my gosh!
That's an interesting story. I think you should share.
Yeah. So Easter for us in Ukraine, for me growing up, was. It's more religious holiday, right? Like you go to church, and you have a basket that you go, and after the mass, everybody comes, either in the church or they come out in like the churchyard, and so the priest would blast the basket with holy water. So you would put a special bread called Pascha, and then you put sausage, you put eggs, and you can decorate the eggs, and people would put like butter and salt. But like the main ingredients would be like the bread, which is called Pascha, sausage, and the eggs, and then
They put it in the basket, or would they cut?
They put it in the basket, and then the priest come, and spray it with holy water. And there is like a song.
Was it cooked sausage?
Yeah.
Okay,
So, like, you buy it, like,
okay.
yeah. And then, and then we come home, and then we eat that with gazillions other dishes that my mom and my grandma would make. But here, I came into U.S. to Isabella's house, like it was right before Easter. I remember that year, in 2005. Was like either in March or April, so it was super early. And I remember, first of all, like I grew up religious, right? Like going to church, and very traditional church. And we went. I don't even know where we went. It was in Carbondale, and then I thought that we were going to...
I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and we had this old schoolhouse.
It was not even a church. It was
an old schoolhouse, and it was, I don't know how many years old. At least 100. Is that safe to say? I don't know. But it was like... It was
old, but it was big. So there was like a big area.
Yeah, big yard. It was like big yard, and then at a church house. Or not a church house, schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse. And I remember that Ingrid, your mom would say, okay, so we're going to go, and there's going to be Easter Bunny and kids. And so then I remember we got there, and like whatever, there was eggs somewhere. And then somebody said, okay, kids, Easter Bunny, you're going to go look for the eggs. And I remember just thinking, excuse my language, I was like, what the fuck? Where does the, like...
Why are we looking?
Easter Bunny, why is this? Kids are so wild with this basket just like going, and I was like, what is happening? It was like, I think that was like that culture shock, because I grew up so differently. There was no Easter Bunny. Nobody was looking for...
nobody's dancing and laughing, and we're all running around looking for chocolate and eggs. And did you guys have the Easter Bunny?
Like, no. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Easter is a very, it's like, but we like, it's more like celebrating.
Yeah.
It was to me because I grew up religious, so going to church, right? And it was like this beautiful tradition. But I just remember it was like such a cultural shock to me, because I remember standing there, probably my eyes are big, and I was like, why is Easter? What does Easter Bunny have to do with Easter? Just bunny, I get it, Easter Bunny. So, but no, we didn't have that.
I know in the baskets in the morning, the Easter Bunny comes and brings you chocolate and little toys.
No, did not have that. But it's funny because now I live here, now I have kids, so of course I do that. Of course we go Easter egg hunt. Of course, like I have little baskets for the kids. You know what I mean? It's just. You evolve and you change. And again, I still hold my tradition close to my heart, but
it's fun to incorporate both.
It's fun to It's fun to incorporate both, and that's what the beauty of mixing cultures, right? Because you can have the best of both worlds.
Exactly. I love it. So the next question is your family here, or where are they currently located?
So some of my family are here, and some of my family are still in Ukraine. Whoever wrote this question, thank you so much for asking. Everyone who is in Ukraine is...
are they safe?
Is safe, but of course it's hard to be so far from your family when they are in the country that where the war is, but everyone is safe.
Okay. So next question is, when first moving to the US, what were some challenges or obstacles you faced while adapting to a new culture?
So first of all, when I came to US, so I was 19. It was my first time leaving Ukraine, right? It was my first time on the airplane. It was my first time leaving Ukraine. So that was challenging on its own. And I didn't go to somewhere just an hour away. I went across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
Is it Pacific or Atlantic? You went across
a big body of water, my dear.
And so that was challenge and obstacle on its own, right?
Yeah.
Now that I think about
And
it,
it's a
right?
long flight, too. It's not...
But it's not even, you see, it's not even like the flight, but just to make that decision. And somehow I knew that it was the right decision for me, you know? And now that I think, like, why wasn't I scared more, or, you know, like, I don't know. But then also, you know, coming and, like, living with your family, you know, and at that time, I thought my English was good, but apparently it wasn't. I remember listening to your mom talk, and I was like, I will never understand that woman. She talks so fast. Like, I have no idea what she's saying, and I don't know how I'm going to survive here. But, you know, as everything in life, when you face it first, it seems so big and so challenging, and you like, that will stay like this forever. But nothing stays like this forever. And then I adapted, and then I learned more, you know, with you know, just being immersed in English language, right? Like, that would help me. Because up until, like, I was learning English since I was 4 years old. I mean, I'm sorry, from 4th grade, right?
Yeah.
4th. So, and then in college, I majored in English. But I was learning English just, you know, with Ukrainian teachers.
Yeah.
Even though I had an amazing teacher, shout out to all of my teachers in Ukraine who taught me English. But, like,
you don't really grasp it until
No.
you go and you're surrounded by it. And
I
you
remember
move to the
coming
country.
here and I was like, oh my gosh. I remember, like, even going to, like, the grocery store and I was like, please, nobody ask me no question. I don't even know. Like, I was just, like, I remember so scared.
Oh my gosh.
But also, like, being with you and your brother, because I feel like our grandma was kind of on the same level.
Yeah, it was nice we could learn together.
We can learn together on that sense, you know, and you taught me a lot of words, and that's how I, you know, and then, like, making friends and all of that. Remember, English was hard for me. Also, I didn't really know, like, how to drive, so I had to learn that. I remember, like, you would go to school, you and your brother, and I would just, like, ride, like, in the neighborhood, and it was nice because Bella grew up in this, like, so it's not like you have to go down like a big hill to go down to the highway, but I would just practice and so I learned that. But also, you know, another thing that was interesting, you know, in Ukraine, because you asked me earlier about diversity in Ukraine, and growing up there was not really diversity. So I remember coming here, and I came through this program called Au Pair, and I spent 3 days in New York as, like, a training, and I remember just seeing the diversity of people, you know, and that I've never seen before. So that was a big, like, eye-opening to me, you know, when you live in a place where everybody looks like you, and then you come into a place where, like, there's so many other beautiful people from all over the world speaking all different languages. It's
incredible.
It's nice to, you know, it was different for me, again, because, you know, there was no diversity for me growing up. Also, like, even when it comes to food, you know, there were a lot of differences, and I was lucky because, you know, your mom cooked a lot of
Meals
a
from
lot of
scratch,
food, but like for example, with my friends, you know, also, like, you know, fast food, right? There was, for me, growing up until I was living in Ukraine, fast food, like, I remember McDonald's was in Kiev. And I remember, like, I went there, and also fast food is very different in different countries, right?
Yeah.
But I never went to fast food, so then when here
You never went to fast food?
No.
So you guys only had McDonald's?
But it was only not even where I was growing up in the city.
It was in the capital.
It was in the capital, and maybe some other big cities, but because in the capital,
amazing.
Like, my friend used to live there, so I would go there, and she took me once to McDonald's, and it was like this, like, wow, like this, like, almost like luxurious experience.
That's so fun. I feel like it's on every corner out here.
Well, yeah. So, you know, so then, like, because me and my friends, we didn't really, like, have, you know, money, so, like, that's where we would go, you know. Also, you know, like, not knowing what food to eat, you know, like, there's a lot of processed food that has a lot of, like, you know, shit inside that, well, now, thank goodness, I know what to eat, what not to eat and stuff, but I also, like, you know, at the beginning, I remember I gained some weight because I was eating,
because everything looks good and everything seems great, and I feel like our country does a lot of things where it's like, if it's on the shelf, it must be safe, but a lot of countries in Europe half the stuff that's on our shelves is banned in Europe.
Yeah. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just some of the...
Yeah, because you're excited. You're like, oh my gosh, so much variety.
So funny fact, I used to, like, I remember coming here, I discovered donuts, and I used to love them.
Oh.
And now, like, for me, because it's still, because I gained weight from that. But yeah, so I remember, like, I loved eating donuts, and now I have, like, not a very nice memories about them, so I'm very careful, like, you know, when I...
it's okay, donuts are good for the soul.
They are good for the soul.
Okay, Iryna, so we have our last question from our follower, and it is, what is the Ukrainian traditional clothing?
Ooh, I love this question. So the traditional Ukrainian clothing is called vyshyvanka, and what it is the embroidered shirts, right? So it can be shirt, like, what do you call it? It's not
it's like a linen,
like a button down. What is it called?
The dress shirt.
So it looks like a dress shirt. It can be long sleeve, short sleeves, but it's embroidered one, right? Mm-hmm. So there's one for men, there's one for women. There's also like embroidered dresses, and I really love it. So, you know, growing up, when you have any like functions at school, right, we would always wear like this, like vyshyvanka and this skirt with big flowers, and then man would wear also vyshyvanka and this red pants they call sharavary, and like red boots. That's like for the men.
Oh, that's so fun.
And then on like women, they would put on their head, it's called oh my gosh, what is the name in English? Like when you...
It's like a flower crown, isn't it?
Is that what it's called in English? In Ukrainian, it's vinochok. So like with...
Where you weave the flowers together.
Yeah, and like...
Yeah, I feel like that's like what we do at like hippie day parades.
Yeah, so hippie day parades here, but the part of traditional clothing. And also the interesting thing about vyshyvanka is that... in like different regions, they use different embroideries, right? And it can mean like a lot of different things. And you guys, I'm going to post a few different types of vyshyvanka on our social media, so you can see.
It's beautiful because the embroidery is super.
It's beautiful.
Well done.
It's beautiful. The next time I go to Ukraine, Bella, hopefully you can come with me, but if you don't, I will bring you this beautiful like embroidered dress. Yes. or a shirt, because it's just, yeah, so it's part of the I don't know, I love it. My kids have it, my parents have it, I have it, I have a dress.
And do you wear it for, you know, any special occasion, or is it like
I do actually. The last so we where my kids go to school, they had cultural night, right? Mm-hmm. So and they had like this little like modeling contest where, because they have kids from different countries, right, or that have heritage from different countries, and so my daughter was wearing vyshyvanka and just, you know, pants. Yeah. And I actually wore my dress, my embroidered dress there, and so people, like, it's nice because people like making compliments, you know, to the dress, and so I was telling them that it's traditional Ukrainian dress. So yeah, when I wear the dress, I feel very, very proud Ukrainian woman.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for writing in. I appreciate it. Thank you for all the great questions. Again, keep following us, keep listening. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Moments That Define Us.
And if you have any more questions, you can always reach out and we can always answer them. Just because we did this podcast doesn't mean we can't continue to answer questions about Ukraine and cultural things. We'll probably end up doing another one, but thanks again for writing your questions. I hope this was insightful and that you learned a lot.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast, rate, review the podcast. And again, a social media is moments that define us. And I feel like it is appropriate to end this podcast, this, I call it Ukrainian podcast, with a phrase that people in Ukraine said for many years, but it feels more appropriate to say it now. And I'm gonna say it in Ukrainian because I feel like it's been said so much in the past year and a half, then people will know what it means. Slava Ukraini! Heroyam slava! Thank you guys. We talk to you next time.